It was a super normal Saturday for Timmy Jackson. He was just 12 years old, a skinny kid with a big smile who didn't talk too much. The sun was out, shining bright in the sky like a big yellow ball. Birds were chirping, hopping from tree to tree, making little happy noises. Timmy was outside in his backyard, jumping up and down on his brand new trampoline. That trampoline was the best thing ever. It was big and bouncy, and every time Timmy jumped, he felt like he could touch the clouds. His sneakers squeaked a little on the mat, and he laughed every time he went up high. It was the kind of day where everything seemed perfect, well, almost everything. Timmy lived in a neighborhood with lots of houses all lined up in rows. Most people there were nice. They'd wave at him when he rode his bike or say hi when he walked by with his mom. Old Mr. Thompson across the street even gave him candy sometimes. Everyone liked Timmy because he was a good kid, always smiling, never causing trouble. But there was one person who didn't like him. One person who didn't like anybody having fun. Her name was Karen Wilson, and she lived right next door. Karen wasn't like the other neighbors. She was the boss of something called the HOA, which Timmy didn't really understand. His dad said it was a group that made rules for the neighborhood, like telling people what color their houses could be or how tall their grass could grow. Karen loved those rules. She carried a clipboard everywhere, holding it tight like it was her best friend. She'd walk around with her pen, writing stuff down, looking at everybody's yards like she was a detective. And her face? Oh boy, her face was scary. She had this mean glare that could make even a big tough hawk fly away fast. When she looked at you, it felt like she was saying, "You're in trouble," without even opening her mouth. Karen didn't like fun things. She didn't like loud kids or barking dogs or even bright flowers that grew too wild. And she really didn't like Timmy's trampoline. The first day it showed up in his backyard, she stood on her porch with her arms crossed, staring at it like it was a monster. Timmy's dad had bought it as a surprise, and Timmy couldn't stop bouncing on it. He'd jump and flip and laugh, feeling the wind whoosh past his ears. But every time he looked over at Karen's house, there she was watching, frowning, her clipboard ready. Timmy didn't get why she hated it so much. It was just a trampoline. It wasn't hurting anybody. But Karen didn't see it that way. That Saturday started out like any other fun day. Timmy woke up early, ate his cereal super fast, and ran outside to bounce. The sun was warm on his face, and the grass smelled fresh from the sprinkler his mom had turned on the night before. He climbed onto the trampoline and started jumping up, down, up, down. Each bounce made him giggle a little. His mom peeked out the kitchen window and waved, smiling at how happy he was. Even his little dog, Sparky, barked and ran around the yard, wagging his tail like crazy. Everything was great. Timmy thought it'd be a normal day, just him and his trampoline, having the best time ever. But here's the thing, Timmy didn't know something big was coming. That perfect Saturday was about to turn into something wild, something he'd never expect. It wasn't just going to be about jumping and laughing anymore. Nope, it was going to flip upside down, and not in a fun trampoline way. Something was brewing next door at Karen's house, something that would make this day one he'd never forget. And it all had to do with that trampoline she hated so much. See, Karen wasn't just grumpy. She was sneaky, too. She had a plan, and it was a crazy one. Timmy didn't see it yet, but she was about to do something so nuts it would bring the cops right to their street. Can you imagine? Cops showing up because of a trampoline. It sounds silly, but with Karen, anything could happen. She wasn't the kind of person who just complained and forgot about it. Oh no, she was the kind who made a big fuss, the kind who turned a little problem into a giant mess. And poor Timmy, bouncing away, had no idea what was about to hit him. So here's a fun question for you to think about: what do you think Karen's going to do that's so wild it'll drag the police into this? I mean, it's just a trampoline, right? How could that cause such a big deal? Well, stick around, because you're not going to believe what's coming next. This story's got twists and turns, and it's going to get crazy fast. Timmy's day was about to go from sunny and bouncy to loud and surprising, all because of one grumpy neighbor with a clipboard and a bad attitude. Let's paint the picture a little more. Timmy's house was a small one with blue paint and a red door. His backyard wasn't huge, but it was big enough for the trampoline, which sat right in the middle like a king on a throne. The fence between his yard and Karen's was short, so she could see everything he did. Her house was different, super neat, with perfect bushes all trimmed into squares and a porch that looked like nobody ever sat on it. Karen liked things quiet and boring. Timmy liked things loud and fun. You can see why they didn't get along. That morning, Timmy was in his own little world. Bounce, 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 he felt like a superhero flying through the air. He didn't notice Karen peeking out her window, her eyes narrow and her lips tight. He didn't hear her muttering to herself about rules and noise. He was too busy having fun, too busy being a kid. But Karen? She was already cooking up trouble. She'd been waiting for a chance to ruin Timmy's fun, and today, she decided, was the day. She didn't know it yet, but her plan was going to backfire in the wildest way possible. Timmy's mom called out, "Don't bounce too long, okay? Lunch is almost ready." Timmy yelled back, "Okay, Mom," and kept jumping. The sun climbed higher, the birds kept singing, and everything seemed fine. But over at Karen's house, something was starting. Something loud. Something messy. Something that would make Timmy's normal Saturday into a story nobody would believe unless they saw it with their own eyes. Karen burst out of her house like a wild storm, fast and loud, her red lipstick shining like a warning sign. She marched right up to the edge of her yard, her eyes locked on Timmy's trampoline. "That trampoline is an eyesore," she shouted, her voice sharp and angry. She held her phone up high, waving it around like it was a sword or a magic wand, something she could use to make all her problems disappear. Timmy was in the middle of a big jump when she yelled. He stopped so fast his sneakers made a loud squeak on the bouncy mat. He landed funny, wobbling a little, and stared at her with wide eyes. What was she so mad about? "It's against the rules," Karen snapped, pointing at the trampoline like it was a bad guy she'd caught sneaking around. Her face was all scrunched up, and her clipboard dangled from her other hand, swinging back and forth. Timmy's dad had told him the trampoline was okay. He'd checked the HOA handbook, the big book of neighborhood rules, not once, but twice. There was nothing in there about trampolines being bad. Nothing at all. Timmy's dad even showed Timmy the pages, just to be sure. But Karen didn't care about that. She didn't care about the truth. She just wanted to win. She wanted everyone to do what she said, and she hated that Timmy wasn't afraid of her yet. "I'm calling 911, she barked, her voice loud enough to make the birds in the trees stop chirping for a second. Then she turned around and stomped back to her porch, her shoe slapping the ground hard with every step. Timmy stood there on the trampoline, his feet stuck to the mat like glue. He blinked a few times, trying to figure out what just happened. Call the cops? Over a trampoline? That didn't make any sense. It was just a bouncy thing in his backyard. It wasn't loud or dangerous or anything bad. He scratched his head, his messy hair flopping around. Why was Karen so mad? Why would she call the police for something so silly? Timmy's mom heard the yelling and poked her head out the back door. "What's going on out here?" she called, wiping her hands on a towel. She'd been making sandwiches inside, and the kitchen smelled like peanut butter. Timmy hopped off the trampoline and ran over to her. "Karen says my trampoline's against the rules," he said, his voice small and confused. "She's calling 911. His mom frowned and stepped outside, looking over at Karen's house. Karen was on her porch now, pacing back and forth, talking fast into her phone. Her clipboard was tucked under her arm, and she kept pointing at Timmy's yard like she was telling the person on the phone exactly where the crime was. "That's ridiculous," Timmy's mom said, shaking her head. She put her hands on her hips and watched Karen for a minute. "There's no rule against trampolines. Your dad made sure of it?" Timmy nodded. He knew his dad was smart about stuff like that. But Karen didn't care what the rules really said. She made up her own rules sometimes, and she expected everyone to follow them. She was the kind of person who thought she was the boss of everything, the houses, the yards, even the kids. And when someone didn't listen to her, she got mad. Really mad. Timmy climbed back onto the trampoline, but he didn't jump this time. He sat down on the edge, swinging his legs, watching Karen. She was still yelling into her phone, her voice getting louder and louder. "Yes, it's a safety hazard," she said. "It's noisy, and it's ugly, and it's ruining the neighborhood." Timmy tilted his head. A safety hazard? He'd never fallen off or gotten hurt. And noisy? It just squeaked a little when he jumped. He didn't get it. The trampoline wasn't ruining anything, it was fun. But Karen acted like it was the worst thing she'd ever seen. A couple of neighbors peeked out their windows, pulling back curtains to see what the fuss was about. Old Mr. Thompson stepped onto his porch across the street, leaning on his cane and squinting at Karen. "What's she hollering about now?" he muttered loud enough for Timmy to hear. Timmy shrugged. He didn't know how to explain it. Karen was just Karen. She liked to make everything a big deal. Last week, she'd yelled at Mrs. Carter down the street for planting pink flowers instead of white ones. The week before that, she told Timmy's friend Jake he couldn't ride his skateboard because it looked messy. She was always finding something to complain about. But this time, it felt different. Calling 911 wasn't just yelling or writing stuff on her clipboard. It was big. It was serious. Timmy's tummy felt a little funny, like when he ate too many cookies and then tried to run. Was Karen really going to get the cops to come take his trampoline away? He loved that trampoline. It was his favorite thing in the whole world right now. He didn't want to lose it just because Karen didn't like it. Timmy's mom walked over to the fence, trying to talk to Karen. "Hey, Karen," she called, keeping her voice nice even though her eyes looked annoyed. "Can we talk about this? It's just a trampoline." Karen didn't even look at her. She kept pacing, her phone pressed to her ear. "No, I want this handled now," she told the person on the phone. "Send someone right away." Then she hung up and crossed her arms, staring at Timmy's yard like she'd already won a big fight. Timmy's mom sighed and walked back to him. "Don't worry," she said, patting his shoulder. "She's being silly. The police won't care about a trampoline." Timmy nodded, but he still felt a little nervous. What if his mom was wrong? What if the cops did care? He didn't want them to think he was a bad kid. He wasn't. He was just jumping, having fun, not hurting anybody. He looked over at Karen again. She was standing on her porch now, tapping her foot, waiting. She looked so sure of herself, like she knew she was right and everybody else was wrong. Timmy didn't like that look. It made him feel small, even though he hadn't done anything bad. But here's the thing, Karen didn't know something huge. She thought Timmy was just some random kid, a quiet boy with a trampoline she could boss around. She thought she could scare him and get her way, like she always did. But Timmy wasn't just any kid. There was a secret about him, a big one, buzzing around like a bee she couldn't see. And that secret was going to turn everything upside down. Karen had no idea what was coming. She thought she was in charge, but she was about to find out she'd made a giant mistake. Timmy didn't know the whole secret yet either. He just knew something felt funny, like the air was holding its breath. Karen's yelling and her 911 call were about to start something wild, something that would make her wish she'd stayed inside with her clipboard and her rules. The trampoline wasn't just a toy, it was the spark that was going to light up a big surprise. And soon, Karen was going to see she'd picked the wrong kid to mess with. The next hour was totally crazy, like a wild ride at an amusement park, but with yelling instead of roller coasters. Karen was all worked up, stomping around her yard like an angry bull. She held her phone tight, shouting into it so loud that Timmy could hear every word, even from his backyard. "This is a noise violation," she hollered. "It's a safety hazard, too. Someone needs to do something about it." Her face was red, and her clipboard bounced against her leg as she paced back and forth. She looked like she was ready to fight the whole world just to get rid of Timmy's trampoline. Neighbors started to notice all the noise. Curtains twitched, and faces popped up in windows all along the street. Mrs. Carter, who lived 2 houses down, peeked out with big, curious eyes. Old Mr. Thompson shuffled onto his porch again, leaning on his cane and muttering to himself. "What's that woman up to now?" he grumbled, loud enough for Timmy to hear. Everyone was whispering, wondering why Karen was making such a big fuss. It was just a trampoline, after all, a bouncy, fun thing that made Timmy happy. But Karen acted like it was a giant monster ruining the whole neighborhood. Timmy's mom stepped outside, her arms crossed tight over her chest. She'd heard enough of Karen's yelling and wanted to fix things before they got worse. "Karen, it's just a trampoline," she called out, her voice calm but firm. She stood by the fence, looking at Karen with a face that said, "Please stop being so silly." But Karen didn't stop. She turned her head and sneered at Timmy's mom, her lips curling up like she'd just smelled something stinky. "You'll see what happens when the law gets here," she shot back, her voice full of confidence. She thought she'd already won. In her mind, the police were on their way, ready to take that trampoline away and prove she was right. She stood there, arms crossed now too, waiting for her big victory. But while Karen was busy shouting and pacing, something else was happening, something she didn't see. Timmy hopped off the trampoline, his sneakers hitting the grass with a soft thud. He didn't look scared or worried like you might expect. Nope, he was grinning. His eyes sparkled with a little secret, and he ran inside his house fast, like a kid who knows something exciting is about to happen. See, Timmy had noticed something Karen hadn't. He'd been watching the street all morning while he bounced, and he saw something strange, something that made this whole mess a lot more interesting. Down the street, parked quiet as a shadow, was a police car. It wasn't moving or flashing its lights or making any noise. It was just sitting there, tucked between two big trees where it was hard to spot unless you were really looking. Timmy had seen it when he was jumping high on the trampoline. At first, he thought it was weird, why would a cop car just sit there? But then he started noticing little things. The officers inside kept glancing over at Karen's house, their heads turning every few minutes. The radio in the car crackled with muffled voices, too soft to hear clearly, but loud enough to make Timmy wonder. What were they saying? Why were they watching Karen? Timmy didn't know everything yet, but he could tell something big was going on. Those little hints were piling up like puzzle pieces, and he was starting to figure out they fit together in a funny way. The cops weren't there for him or his trampoline, that much he was pretty sure of. They were there for something else, something Karen didn't expect. She was too busy yelling and waving her phone to notice the car down the street, but Timmy saw it all. And that's why he was grinning. He knew this day was about to get wild, and Karen had no clue what was coming. Back outside, Karen kept pacing her yard, her shoes kicking up little puffs of dirt. She looked so sure of herself, like she was the queen of the neighborhood and everyone had to listen to her. "I told them to hurry," she shouted into the air, even though she wasn't on the phone anymore. She wanted everyone to hear how important she was, how she'd called 911 and made things happen. Timmy's mom shook her head and went back inside, muttering, "This is nonsense." She didn't think the police would care about a trampoline, and she was right, but not in the way she thought. Timmy peeked out his kitchen window, watching everything unfold. His little dog, Sparky, barked and ran in circles around his feet, excited by all the commotion. Timmy scratched Sparky's ears and whispered, "SHH, something cool's gonna happen." He could feel it in his bones. This wasn't just about Karen being grumpy anymore. Those cops down the street were up to something, and it had to do with Karen. Timmy didn't know the whole story yet, but he'd heard his uncle talking on the phone that morning. His uncle was a police detective, a big guy with a loud laugh who always brought Timmy candy. Timmy hadn't caught all the words, but he'd heard Karen and today, and finally. It was all starting to make sense now. The neighbors kept watching, too. Mrs. Carter opened her window a crack and leaned out, whispering to Mr. Thompson across the street. "She's lost it this time," Mrs. Carter said, her voice quiet but sharp. Mr. Thompson nodded, tapping his cane on the porch. "Always making trouble," he agreed. They didn't like Karen much either. She'd yelled at them before, too. But they didn't know about the police car yet. They didn't see the little glances from the officers or hear the radio crackling. Only Timmy did, and it made him feel like he was in on a big secret. Karen stopped pacing for a second and stood still, staring at Timmy's trampoline like it was her worst enemy. "You'll be gone soon," she said to it, like the trampoline could hear her. She thought the cops she'd called were coming to help her, to take it away and make her the winner. She didn't know the real truth. She didn't know that something big was brewing, something that would flip her whole plan upside down. The police car down the street wasn't moving yet, but Timmy could tell it wouldn't stay quiet forever. Those officers were waiting for the right moment, and Karen was walking right into a trap she didn't even see. Timmy's grin got bigger as he watched from the window. He didn't say anything out loud, he didn't need to. The little hints were enough for him, the car, the glances, the radio. Something awesome was about to happen, and Karen was totally clueless. She thought she was the smartest person on the block, but she was wrong. Timmy knew this wasn't just about his trampoline anymore. It was about Karen, and whatever she'd done to make those cops park down the street. The next few minutes were going to be nuts, and Timmy couldn't wait to see what happened next. The street got loud. All of a sudden sirens screamed as another cop car zoomed up, its red and blue lights flashing like a wild dance party. Karen's 911 call had worked, and she thought she'd won the whole game. She stood in her yard with a big smirk on her face, pointing at Timmy's trampoline like it was some sneaky crook she'd caught red-handed. "See? I told you," she shouted, her voice full of pride. She waved her arms around, her clipboard swinging like a flag of victory. In her mind, the police were here to take that trampoline away and prove she was the boss. She looked so happy, like she'd just won a prize at the fair. Timmy stood by his trampoline, watching it all happen. His mom was next to him now, her arms crossed, her eyebrows scrunched up. They heard the sirens and saw the new cop car pull up right in front of Karen's house. Karen clapped her hands once, like she couldn't wait to see the cops march over and yank the trampoline out of the yard. But then something weird happened, something she didn't expect at all. The first cop, the one who'd been parked down the street all quiet and sneaky, opened his car door and stepped out. He was tall, with a serious face, and he didn't even look at Timmy or the trampoline. Not once. Instead, he walked straight toward Karen, his boots thumping on the pavement. "Ma'am," he said in a deep, calm voice, "we need to talk." Karen's smirk froze on her face, like someone had pressed pause on a movie. Her mouth opened a little, and her jaw dropped so low it almost hit the ground. She blinked fast, confused, her eyes darting around like she didn't know what was happening. The second cop, the one from the new car, walked over too, holding a little notepad in his hand. He flipped it open and looked at Karen with a face that wasn't smiling at all. "We've had complaints," he said, his voice steady. "About you." Timmy's eyes got big, and he tugged on his mom's sleeve. "What's going on?" he whispered. His mom shushed him gently, but she was watching just as hard as he was. Karen's face changed fast, her smirk was gone, and now she looked like she'd seen a ghost. Her cheeks went white, super pale, and her hands dropped to her sides. "What?" she squeaked, her voice tiny and shaky. "Complaints about me? That's crazy." She shook her head hard, like she could shake the words away. But the cops didn't budge. They stood there, tall and serious, staring right at her. Here's where it gets super cool and a little funny, too. Turns out, Timmy's uncle was a police detective. His name was Uncle Mike, and he was a big guy with a loud laugh and a shiny badge. For weeks, Uncle Mike had been checking out all the wild stuff Karen was doing in the neighborhood. She didn't know it, but people were tired of her nonsense. She'd been making fake reports, like saying dogs were barking when they weren't, or that kids were breaking rules they didn't even break. She'd been bugging neighbors, yelling at them for tiny things, like planting the wrong flowers or parking their bikes in the wrong spot. And she'd even lied to the HOA board, telling them stuff that wasn't true just to get her way. Timmy didn't know all of this until that morning. He'd been eating his cereal at the kitchen table when Uncle Mike called his mom. Timmy's ears perked up because Uncle Mike's voice was loud, even through the phone. "Today's the day," Uncle Mike had said. "We're finally gonna talk to that Karen lady." Timmy didn't catch everything, but he heard enough to know something big was coming. That's why he'd been grinning earlier. Those cops parked down the street weren't there for him or his trampoline. They were there for Karen. They'd been waiting all morning, watching her house, ready to step in when the time was right. And here's the best part: Karen had no idea. She thought she was so smart, calling 911 to get rid of the trampoline. But when she dialed that number, she didn't just bring more cops to her street, she accidentally brought them right to her own front door. It was like she'd set a trap for herself without even knowing it. The first cop, the one who'd been parked there, was part of Uncle Mike's team. They'd been planning to talk to Karen anyway, and her 911 call just made it happen faster. She'd called the cops on herself, and now she was stuck. Karen's hands started to shake, and she took a step back. "This is a mistake," she said, her voice getting louder. "I called you. I'm the one who needs help." The first cop shook his head. "We've got reports," he said, "from lots of people. They say you've been causing trouble for weeks." The second cop nodded and read from his notepad. "Fake noise complaints. Harassing neighbors. Lying to the HOA. We've been looking into it." Karen's eyes got huge, and she clutched her clipboard tight, like it could save her. "That's not true," she yelled, but her voice sounded wobbly now, not so tough anymore. Timmy couldn't believe it. He looked at his mom, and she had a little smile tugging at her lips. "Uncle Mike," Timmy whispered, and his mom nodded. "Yup," she said softly. "He's been waiting for this." Timmy remembered how Uncle Mike always said Karen was a handful. Now he knew what that meant. The neighbors were watching, too. Mrs. Carter leaned out her window, and Mr. Thompson clapped his hands once, laughing a little. They'd all had enough of Karen's rules and yelling, and now the cops were here to set things straight. Karen tried to argue more. "You're supposed to take that trampoline away," she said, pointing at it again. "That's why I called." But the first cop just looked at her, calm as could be. "The trampoline's not the problem," he said. "You are." Karen's face went even whiter, if that was possible. She looked around, like she wanted someone to help her, but no one did. The neighbors weren't on her side anymore. They were tired of her tricks. Timmy felt a giggle bubble up in his chest. It was so funny. Karen thought she was going to win, but instead, she'd made everything worse for herself. The cops weren't here to bother him. They were here because of her. Uncle Mike had been sneaky, watching and waiting, and now Karen was caught. She didn't know about Uncle Mike or the secret plan. She didn't know the police car had been there all along, ready for her. And she really didn't know that calling 911 was the dumbest thing she could have done that day. Karen's face was all red and sweaty now, and she started talking fast. "This is ridiculous," she yelled, throwing her hands up in the air. "I'm the victim here. I called you." She pointed at the cops like they were supposed to agree with her. But the cops didn't listen. They just stood there, looking at her with serious faces. They weren't buying her story, not even a little bit. The first cop shook his head, and the second one kept holding his notepad, ready to write more if he had to. Karen's big plan was falling apart, and she didn't know what to do. Then the neighbors started coming out of their houses. Mrs. Carter walked onto her lawn, her arms crossed, nodding as she listened. Mr. Thompson hobbled over with his cane, a big grin on his face. Even Jake, Timmy's friend from down the street, peeked out with his mom. They all gathered around, watching as the cops talked about all the silly stuff Karen had done. "She's been yelling at kids," the first cop said. "Threatening pets, too, like telling people their dogs can't bark." The second cop added, "And she's been making up rules that aren't real, just to boss everyone around." The neighbors nodded more, whispering to each other. They'd seen it all before, and they were tired of it. Just then, a big black truck rolled up, and out stepped Timmy's uncle, Uncle Mike. He was tall and strong, with his police badge shining on his shirt. He walked over to Timmy, who was standing by his trampoline, and gave him a quick wink. "Good job keeping cool, kid," Uncle Mike said, his voice loud and happy. Timmy grinned big. He liked that his uncle was proud of him. Uncle Mike turned to the cops and nodded, like he was saying, "Go ahead." He'd been the one behind this whole thing, making sure Karen's nonsense stopped today. The first cop looked at Karen, his eyes narrow. "You need to stop this," he said, his voice firm. "If you keep it up, you'll be in real trouble, bigger trouble than this." Karen's mouth opened like she wanted to argue, but no words came out. She looked at the neighbors, then at Uncle Mike, then at the cops. She didn't have any friends left to help her. Finally, she turned around and slunk back to her house, her shoulders all droopy. Her clipboard slipped out of her hand and clattered to the ground with a loud bang. She didn't even pick it up. She just shuffled inside and shut the door. Timmy climbed back onto his trampoline, his sneakers squeaking as he started to bounce. Up, down, he went higher than ever, feeling the wind whoosh past his face. The neighbors cheered, clapping their hands and smiling. "Way to go, Timmy," Mr. Thompson called out. Mrs. Carter waved, and Jake ran over to the fence, yelling, "Bounce higher." The whole street felt happy now, like a big weight was gone. They were finally free of Karen's grumpy rules and loud yelling. That trampoline wasn't just a toy anymore. It was the spark that lit up Karen's big fall. She'd tried to get rid of it, but instead, it showed everyone who she really was. Timmy kept bouncing, his smile as big as the sun, knowing he'd helped make things right without even trying. The neighborhood was back to being fun, and Karen? She'd think twice before messing with anyone again. Okay, here's something cool to think about: sometimes the smallest kid, the one with the biggest, brightest smile, can beat a bully who thinks they're the toughest person around. That's what happened to Karen. She thought she was so big and smart, but little Timmy, with his trampoline and his quiet grin, showed her she wasn't as unbeatable as she thought. She learned the hard way that you shouldn't mess with someone who's got more going on than you can see. Timmy didn't even have to try hard, he just kept being himself, and that was enough to turn everything around. It's kind of awesome, right? A kid like Timmy, who didn't yell or fight, still won because he had a secret weapon, his uncle and the truth. Karen didn't see it coming, and that's what made it so great. So, what about you? Have you ever seen someone mean or bossy get what they deserve, right when they thought they were on top? Maybe a kid at school who brags too much, or someone who picks on others, suddenly gets caught. Tell me about it below, I'd love to hear your stories. This whole adventure with Timmy and Karen shows that being kind and staying cool can be stronger than being loud and pushy. If this story made you laugh or cheer, give it a big thumbs up. And if you want more fun tales like this, bounce back next time, I've got plenty more to share. Keep smiling, just like Timmy, because you never know when your smile might change everything.